Dan Markel was a bright and talented young law professor at Florida State University in Tallahassee. He had 2 children with his wife, Wendy Adelson, but Dan and Wendy broke up and entered into a bitter custody battle involving their children. Wendy moved back to South Florida, where her parents and brother lived, and ran an incredibly successful dental practice more than 400 miles from Tallahassee. But the custody battle suddenly ended when Dan was gunned down in his driveway. Prosecutors allege an elaborate plot hatched by the Adelson family involving a former shot girl and a couple of gang members. So far, 3 people have been convicted in the plot, and now, finally, one member of the Adelson family has been implicated, Wendy's brother Charlie, who is locked up waiting for his trial. Tonight, we take a closer look at the murder plot that took the life of Dan Markel.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And this is a very layered, complicated set of facts surrounding what happened to Dan Markel. So we're going to take our time to go through it tonight. But let's start with Dan himself. He was a brilliant man. And I can say that because we're in the same business, this thing of ours, law, right? Dan, smartest of the smart, went to Harvard and then Harvard Law School. They don't let just anyone into Harvard Law School. It's like the top 0.01% of the top 1%. That's who goes there, okay? Super smart, super successful. After Harvard, he clerked for the Ninth Circuit, started working at a high-profile, powerful law firm in D.C., and then chose to study the law and to teach the law as a professor at Florida State University in Tallahassee. So that's his professional background. And that's one side of Dan Markel. It was a big part of his life. But a bigger part of his life was being a dad. I mean, this guy was a dedicated father to 2 children. He was also a husband, but things fell apart. It happens. We've seen it before. Happens all the time, unfortunately. People get, they see things differently, they grow apart. But when parents grow apart, that doesn't stop their obligations or their love for their children. And this is really the biggest part of Dan Markel. He was a dad. I mean, the dads who are watching tonight, you know that, and even moms as parents, right? But as a dad, you go out, sometimes you're working, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're your profession, da-da-da. That's all fine and good. At the end of the day, you're a dad. And that's what you're most excited about, most proud about, and consumes you. And that was him. So he was going through a very complicated divorce because his wife is moving to South Florida, which is like 400 miles away. You can't have, the kids can't bounce back and forth that easily. So that's why there was some tension in this separation and this divorce and trying to do what's best for those children. And it's always best for the children to have both parents in their lives, especially when you have great guys like Dan Markel. Now, let's go to the scene of the crime. This was a hit. It was a hit. There's no other way to describe it. This was not a robbery. This was not road rage. This was a planned and plotted hit. And one of the men who did it admitted that it was a hit. Okay, I'm here to commit a murder. Some guy didn't know, had no connection to, there was no reason to him, right? For him to go after Professor Dan Markel. He was from South Florida, the first hitman who got caught, Luis Rivera. So that is just an indisputable fact. It was a hit. The hitman admits it was a hit, and there is no nexus, no connection between the hitmen and the victim in this case. That is clear. So where is the connection? Well, prosecutors say the connection is with a family called the Adelsons. No one else had a motive in this case. This family did. This family did. You had Wendy, who is divorcing Dan and moving far away and wants custody of her children. You've got her mom and dad, the grandparents, who want their children in South Florida. And then you have Wendy's brother, who from what I can tell, is a member of his family, loves his sister, and wants what's best for her, and would do anything for her. So the only motive in this case that anyone had on earth, the only ones who benefited, seemingly benefited, on earth from the death of Dan Markel were the Adelsons in this custody battle. Now, that alone doesn't mean they did it. It's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but it's the theory of the case. And as Julia Janae explains, the connection between the hitmen and why they would do this seems, according to prosecutor, to flow right through the Adelsons. Take a look.
To this day, do you think he's guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that he should be prosecuted for his involvement in the murder of Dan Markel?
Yes, ma'am.
That's Catherine McBanawa talking about her ex-boyfriend, Charles Adelson, during her murder trial for the death of Florida State law professor Dan Markel.
Do you think he should come forward and let the jury know that you had nothing to do with this?
Yes, ma'am.
It was McBanawa's second trial for Markel's death after a jury deadlocked in her first trial in 2019. The second time around, a jury rejected her claims of innocence.
The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
Now, Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson, Markel's former brother-in-law.
What enemy or enemies had Mr. Markel made that set into motion such a brutal act? The answer is own family.
It would take 8 years for prosecutors to bring a case against Adelson to a grand jury, despite early suspicions of his possible involvement. Markel was involved in a bitter child custody dispute with Adelson's sister, Wendy, when he was gunned down in his driveway in 2014. Wendy Adelson testified that there was ill will between her ex-husband and her brother.
He had bought me a TV when I got divorced and said it was a present and made a very bad joke and bad taste that it was cheaper than hiring a hitman.
But prosecutors say Adelson did hire hitmen with McBanawa's help. Sigfredo Garcia, the father of McBanawa's children, and Luis Rivera, a gang member and friend of Garcia's. Rivera pleaded guilty in exchange for testimony implicating Garcia as the gunman and McBanawa as the link to the Adelson family.
I gave him the truth, bro. I'm not gonna go back and forth with you, man. I gave him the truth. Like, it was Katie and Garcia. It was all three of us was involved.
Investigators used a sprawling web of surveillance video, wiretaps, and cell tower data to connect a vehicle that was leaving the crime scene to Garcia and Rivera. Connecting McBanawa to the plot would prove more difficult because she wasn't involved, according to McBanawa's lawyers.
It wasn't through Catherine McBanawa. This wasn't something that was negotiated through Catherine McBanawa. It was about her. The communications that we have between Sigfredo Garcia and Charles Adelson in the weeks before the murder, in the days before the murder, are consistent with the fact that there was a deal between the two of them, and part of that deal was Charles Adelson breaking up with Catherine so that Sigfredo could get back the woman that he loved so much.
What's different now? Leon County prosecutors say they have a new version of secretly recorded video showing McBanawa and Adelson in a restaurant in 2016 with enhanced audio.
If a badge comes up to you, tell them have a nice day, officer. Listen, if they want to charge you with something, charge me. If not, I don't talk to cops.
Prosecutors showed the video to the jury in McBanawa's retrial and to the grand jury that indicted Charles Adelson.
The piece of evidence was something that I did think was important, and I've always felt like if we could just get that clarified, that would make a big difference potentially in the case, so I was really happy to have that piece of evidence to present to the grand jury.
Charles Adelson now faces the same charges that McBanawa was convicted of: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder. Adelson has pleaded not guilty and maintains his innocence.
And joining me by phone tonight, north of the border in Toronto, Ontario, Dan's mom, Ruth Markel. Ruth, thanks so much for coming back and joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here and be on the show and to talk about the fact that you're keeping the limelight on Dan's murder and keeping us always moving forward.
Let's talk about always moving forward. We cover a lot of cases here on Court TV. This is one of the oldest. It goes back to 2014. As we sit here tonight, are you seeing any light at the end of the tunnel of justice?
Well, I'm really hoping that we can start to see, justice moving in the right direction. We do have coming up on October 23rd, the start of the trial for Charlie Adelson. And we hope now that as we're getting closer, and you're right, it has been a very, very long time and very painful to the family. So we feel it's like a very, crawling process. But maybe we're coming to some point that we will sort of get some more greater understanding and insight as to what the culpabilities are.
Ruth, your son was such a brilliant legal mind. What do you think he would say about the way this entire thing has progressed through our legal system?
Well, Dan, I think, would definitely, want to see, he's very, very interested in justice. He was very, very interested in sort of the law, should be fair. He was also concerned about victims in general. And here we are. We're a family full of victims, our own family, suffering really a long time, the victim experience. So I'm sure he would have had that sensitivity and compassion to any family going through what we are experiencing right now.
Ruth, at the top of the show, I said there was no one else on earth who benefited or had a motive for the murder of your son. Was I right?
Well, the courts will tell the end story. There is certainly a lot of suspicion that it is a murder for hire, and there certainly are some noted family members who have not yet had their trials, and I think that's very important. But we hope that now we're just sort of starting to open the next chapter of this terrible, horrendous crime. And it's very hard on us because people don't realize, behind the scenes here, Dan's birthday's coming up. Now it's the back-to-school system for everybody, young families. We're back to court. This is our third major trial. And, it's not an easy circumstance to be living through. The trial life is, we're waiting all the time. There's uncertainty. And maybe now some of the cloud will, sort of have a little more brightness in it, and we can only tell until, Charlie Adelson's trial starts. As you probably know today, there was a case management on October 23rd, and, this is the next chapter in a very, very long, drawn-out process, and we are all going to be in Tallahassee, Shelley, myself, Dan's father, Phil, and we, have been participating in all the trials, and we will be there. And, of course, we will, again, getting organized for the victim impact statements. The glitz of this case doesn't show the suffering from the family, right, or the homicide survivor. And, how difficult it is, because it's even now it's the season of Dan's birthday. So we have all these sort of grief kind of memories, and at the same time, we are in the justice system, which has its own complexities.
Absolutely. Listening to you, Ruth, I could see where Dan got his sense of fairness. I asked a question and put something out there, and you answered in a way that was pretty amazing. In someone in your circumstance and having gone through what your family's gone through. So that's very clear to me right now. At the time he was murdered, what was the status of the custody dispute that was ongoing? Wasn't there a sense that Dan was getting ready to, or there were talks about resolving this whole thing?
Well, there were several issues. Remember, the divorce had finished. There was already a petition that the Adelsons had initiated with the court to try to get the family to be able to move to South Florida. with or without Dan, meaning, they wanted just to get there. And that petition was thrown out. So it wasn't yet, very much resolved in any way. It was in the heart of the conflict. And it was in a very, very intense, very, very contentious, intense conflict. The custody, their children were 50-50 with Dan and 50-50 with Wendy. But the facts of where they would live and how they would live, and in, sort of what type of family life, those were sort of the open-ended questions at the time.
So as we sit here, again, 2014 was when this happened. The children obviously have been growing up and getting bigger. Your grandchildren have been, as a result of all this, been raised in South Florida, right?
Well, raised since they were young, yes, since they were, preschoolers, like formal schooling, yes. They have had a very long time. 2014, they're both, one is born in 2010 and one is born in 2009. So they were really, really young, very young children, right, at the time of the murder and even at the time of the divorce, which was in 2013. So they have had a very difficult, very extremely difficult, kind of early period in their life and turmoil. And, and now it's not easy either, because I think by now we don't know definitely, but we would understand now that they have some awareness that their Uncle Charlie, so to speak, is actually in jail. And that even, further complicates them. The people I'm most worried about now are my grandchildren, Benjamin and Lincoln. That's what keeps me up at night. And
are you able to speak to them and see them and talk about their dad?
No, not in the sense of talk about their dad. We weren't allowed to see them for 6 years. And then in 2022, I was able, with the whole community, the person who championed the Markel Act, her name is Karen Halpern Cyphers, and we passed a law that allowed visitation under very, very specific circumstances. So that was the big breakthrough. At that point, Wendy did invite us to saying that there was a bar mitzvah for Benjamin, and then we asked to see them in person. It was the first time we'd seen them in 6 years. So she let us visit on April 20th of 2022. And the next morning, we were there in South Florida. In April 21st, 2022, Charlie was arrested. So that changed the whole invitation to us being able to kind of have an invitation or an access to be included with Benjamin's bar mitzvah. But we did have another visit. We've had 2 visits all in all. It's not a natural situation, but at least we had a bit of a crack in the door, the expression. There's
right.
Some crack in the door to start to see the children.
That's good to hear, but again, it's so complicated and so delicate. Ruth, no family. It's difficult enough for a family to go through one trial. This is going to be number 3 for you. You said you're going down. Everyone's prepared or making the preparations for it. Do you have a lot of communication with prosecutors? Do they have a victim advocate and all of that, and kind of
yes,
helping
the
you?
liaison. This is the part of the system that works well, other than delays and all the other contradictions. But we do have an excellent victim liaison person from the prosecutor's office, and there's if we need to have certain kinds of answers or so forth, there's an active communication. That's sort of the piece, and they take very good care of us throughout the trial, which is important. Yes, and I will be going down. The trial starts for the jury selection on October 23rd. On October 25th, actually, I'm doing a presentation on my book, The Unveiling, which is going to be held at Shomrei Synagogue, which is where Danny was a member. So it's a public event, and that precedes the actual opening arguments of the trial. So that part is something where the community in Tallahassee, who's been very, very supportive from day one. They had a major memorial for Dan. FSU University had another one. So this is really a little bit of a chance to, open up some communication, connection, and show our gratitude to all the support that we've received from the Tallahassee community.
So that's great to hear as well. Ruth Markel, great to speak with you. Our thoughts are with you and your family, and we'll speak again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your interest in the case. Thank you.
All right, folks. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the case, get into some of the evidence, also kind of go through how everyone is connected to one another. Again, it's a complicated case for prosecutors, for everyone. Plus, coming up next hour.
In Thomasville, Georgia, and the Bahamas, Lindsay Shiver is accused of cheating on her husband with her Bahamian boyfriend and then trying to hire a hitman to kill him. Tonight, new body cam video outside of their Georgia home involving Lindsay and her mother-in-law. Is this what led to the alleged plot?
Your mother-in-law, something is she's freaking out apparently,
she's
but
hypomanic.
But
just a mental issue. All three of the people in the car have mental issues. Don't know.
Yeah.
They don't need my kids.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Couldn't keep my life straight.
They were killed by their own children.
Court TV Legendary Trials. Go to courttv.com/legendary trials to find out how to watch.
A victim with celebrity ties from Stormy Daniels to once being engaged to Drew Carey.
Now her alleged killer faces a jury.
The Hollywood Obsession Murder Trial. Coverage begins Tuesday at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Comes up to you, tell them have a nice day, officer. Listen, if they want to charge you with something, charge me. If not, I don't talk to cops. Sorry. No, it's very simple. Like, if you're going to charge me, charge me. Yeah, but things have changed a lot, though. You know what's changed a lot? Cameras everywhere.
Secret recording made by law enforcement of Charlie Adelson with Catherine McBanowa. This is a key relationship in this case because you've got to follow the connections to tie it all together. Prosecutors have to do it. I'm going to do it right now for you, what the allegations are. Let's take a look on your screen. And across the top, you will see Wendy Adelson, Donna Adelson, Charlie Adelson, and Harvey Adelson. That's the Adelson family. Donna, Harvey, the mother, the grandparents of the children in the custody dispute. But you see, Charlie is connected to Katie McBanowa. She was a shot girl in the club. Charlie's driving around town in his little red sports car, and he ends up hooking up with her, okay? Hooking up with her. So he's connected to her. They, dated, however you want to describe it. And then Katie is connected to Sigfredo Garcia. That's the father of her children. Okay, he's known as Tuto. He's friends with a guy named Tato, Luis Rivera. Luis Rivera, a member of the Latin Kings gang. He's the one who admitted that he was hired as a hitman to kill some lady, some guy. Some guy was married to a lady, and it was something about kids. I mean, it was very vague what he even knew about it. Anyhow, the connection there is Catherine's connected to Tuto, Tuto's connected to Tato, and Tuto and Tato killed Dan. That's the connection. Dan obviously married to Wendy. They were having the custody dispute. I hope that makes some sense to you tonight. We're going to try to make some more sense. So let's bring in our guests. Joining us in McKinney, Texas, prosecutor, defense attorney Carl Steinbeck, creator of the YouTube channel Jury Trial Mentor, has done a lot on this case, is with us. Also joining us in Indianapolis, Indiana, co-hosts of the Murder Sheet podcast, Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee, and in Los Angeles, California, clinical and forensic neuropsychologist Dr. Judy Ho. Welcome to you all. All right, Carl, you've taken the deep dive into this as well. To me, it's all about trying to make these connections. You've worked both sides of cases. Do you think that connection is strong enough to link Charlie Adelson to the hitmen?
That restaurant video, the Dolce Vita is the name of the restaurant, and that videotape
solidly squares with Charlie being involved in this. He was the mastermind behind it. Granted, all the Adelsons were involved, and this was a team effort from a review of the evidence. But Charlie was the mastermind in coming up with their operational plan on how to effectuate this. And he's also the link between the hitmen and having that connection with Katie. So Katie there was somebody that he dated for a number of months. There's some reports that he dated as back as many as 8-9 months previous to the murder. And so having sort of an on and off again boyfriend girlfriend relationship, Charlie then when the time came to find somebody to do the killing on Dan, he looked to her because he also knew that she had criminal elements involved in her life, to include the father of her children, who was a career criminal of sorts. No indications he'd committed murder before, but also the Latin King member was a best friend of his. They'd grown up together. He was involved in a lot of violent crime, to say the least. And so those two got together to make that long trip. It's a very long drive. I think it's 7.5 hours if you don't have a lot of traffic going from South Miami area there all the way up to Tallahassee. So they not only made one trip, but they actually made 2 trips up there. The first trip was the month prior, sometime in June, and they had trouble finding Dan at that time. But after their sense of urgency came out, because Dan was getting ready to leave to go to New York City, and also the fact that they had these pending motions. Dan had made some allegations against Wendy that he basically came out and said that her fitness to practice law for the Florida State University Law School was in question based on the way he accused her of hiding assets in their divorce proceedings that happened the year prior. So there was a lot of things about to change radically different and not for the good in Wendy's life. And she also was going to be facing depositions. She also faced the reeling losses that Ruth Markel talked about. And she also had spent a lot of money in attorney's fees. So really the only option that became viable for them became the criminal murder option, to be able to get her to move down to Florida. In fact, it worked within days.
Right, it works. I mean, the kids have grown
killed.
up. The kids have grown up in South Florida.
Right.
So it's like mission accomplished to a certain extent. Dr. Judy Ho, let me ask you something here. Do you believe that there is truth in humor? Because Wendy Adelson testified at 2 of these trials that her brother, Charlie, joked to her when he was giving her a housewarming gift as a TV, said, oh yeah, it's cheaper than hiring a hitman. Do you think there's something to that? Because it was evidence in both trials against Catherine McBanowa.
Well, Vinny, there's a reason why these sayings occur around humor and truth. Like there's 50% truth in every joke. And I think that that's because anecdotally, that's what we see, that sometimes people use humor as a way to test an idea, to try to test a reaction from people, to see what people around them would say. And if people around them seem like they're kind of into the idea even, or that maybe they're not scoffing at it or concerned about it, then it's something that they might be able to move forward with, even if it's a heinous idea. So I think that sometimes humor can be used to diffuse that, but also as a way to really assess whether or not you can move forward and talk more seriously about something that could be framed as a joke, so that if somebody has a huge reaction to it, you can say, you know, I'm kidding. You know that that's just a joke, and you can just brush it off and pretend it never happened.
Yeah, that's brilliant analysis, and I think it's the best way to explain it. All right, let's take a listen to Catherine McBanowa. She testified in her own case, and here's the prosecutor asking again about that connection between her and the Adelsons. Remember, they have this very successful, lucrative dental practice.
Why did he put you on the payroll? Is that as a favor?
Yes, ma'am.
Not as payment for a murder?
No, ma'am.
Not to keep you happy?
Why wouldn't he just pay me the cash? Why would I have to get a check from somewhere?
Isn't it true that you've been offered some kind of big payoff if you refuse to cooperate against Charlie Adelson?
If I refuse?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
Has anybody offered you some money?
No.
Do you remember telling anybody that you would be able to stay home after you get acquitted and have a tutor for your kids to be homeschooled at the house?
No. Never made that comment.
Did you ever show your breast to some people and tell them that you got them courtesy of the professor?
Definitely never happened.
Anya Kay and Kevin Greenlee, in this trial, she's never admitted being part of this whole thing at 2 of her trials. I don't know what's going to happen in Adelson's trial, if she's going to try to cut a deal. But she's denied it. But she's on the payroll, right? She's on the payroll of this dental office. She's a shot girl, for goodness sake.
Yes, exactly. And so what exactly her qualifications would be for a professional setting in the dental world are very unclear. Our understanding is that there's some talk about her having been taken into custody by the local sheriff at some point. That might indicate that there's some sort of deal on the table or some sort of opportunity for her to come clean about the Adelson role in all this. So that will be very interesting to see going forward if she ends up basically flipping.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult for her, though, because she testified under oath twice that she had nothing to do with it. And to say it now, but you think there's a chance because there's some movement there?
Yes.
All right, we've got more to talk about in this case. I'll tell you, it's layered, it's complicated. That's why we bring in the great guests. When we come back, we'll talk about not Charlie Adelson, but how about the other 3 Adelsons?
Was there a time during the time that you were living there at Aqua Ridge that you determined that you would like to move to South Florida with the children?
There was.
All right. And were your parents very involved in trying to facilitate that relocation?
My parents were supportive of me moving to South Florida.
Would you describe your parents as being over-involved in your personal business?
As compared to other people's parents?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Come on, Wendy, be honest with that one. Of course they were. They were all over this. They were all over this, and they were actually sort of involved in some of the litigation in the custody with allegations going back and forth. So Donna Adelson, who's the grandmother of the children, Wendy's mother, is bumped into by an undercover agent who is pretending to be the brother of the hitman. And what they're trying to do is stir the pot a little bit to get the Adelsons to start talking because they've got wires on all of them and they're following them and they're surveilling them, trying to get them to talk about it to incriminate themselves. Take a look at this. This is fascinating to watch. This is an undercover agent bumping in to Donna Adelson on the streets of Florida.
This is Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen. No, don't be scared. Listen, I just want to let you know that we know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Hugo for quite some time after your problem up north has been resolved. And I want to let you know that my brother, he's incarcerated. He helped your family with this problem you guys had up north. And we want to make sure that he's going through some rough times. We want to make sure that you take care of what he's going through, the way you're taking care of Katie and Hugo. Well, this will explain it. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, so what happens after this? Well, there's now the Dolce Vita surveillance recording that we were talking about. This is Charlie and Katie now being recorded talking about that incident where someone, they don't know who it is, bumps into Donna.
I wish it was cop playing games. Why did you know it? It was a cop playing games or an investigator playing games. And they didn't make it right. They didn't have their own friends. Now I mentioned being all and my family. And I think if they thought I had something to do with it, they would find me and they'd talk to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't talk to the person who's involved. It's not you are involved. And I'm not involved.
I'm not involved, is what he's saying. Now, Charlie also has a meeting with his dad, Harvey. And of course, they're there to record that. This is at the Matsuri restaurant. Okay, at the end of that video, by the way, they look at it and they say, are we being recorded? True story. All right, let's bring back in our guest, Carl Steinbeck, great attorney, Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee, Murder Sheet Podcast, and Dr. Judy Ho. All right, Kevin and Anya, these are the key to the prosecution of Charlie Adelson, according to the prosecutor. She wanted that enhanced audio so she could play this stuff for the jury. What do we know about all this?
Well, it's fascinating, as you say, because it kind of shows how these people are reacting to sudden pressure. Their alleged scheme is starting to come unravel. People are beginning to notice and pay attention. And so they're in crisis mode. They have to figure out how to deal with this. And it's absolutely mesmerizing to watch. And also, it's certainly incriminating.
Dr. Judy Ho, what did you think of the reactions? How about Donna on the side of the street when she's bumped into by this undercover?
I know. I mean, again, very fascinating and interesting that people would have these conversations in open restaurants, especially when there's this, suspicion that you may have been involved in this very highly publicized murder. So I think that it was interesting to watch Donna's reaction, even though she says, I don't know what you're talking about. She seems very intrigued by the conversation. And I would imagine if there was absolutely no suspicion whatsoever and you had no idea what they were talking about, that you would you wouldn't even sit there to allow them to finish their sentence. You would say, I don't know who you are and goodbye. This is kind of scary and I'm moving on, right?
Yeah.
But she stays for the whole conversation. And afterwards, she puts away the note.
She keeps the note and she walks away. Yeah.
Right. So that was very, very odd, I think. And I don't think that the average person would have stayed for the whole conversation or even kept the note. They would have just shoved it back at the person maybe if they made it to that part of the conversation, or threw it away. Like, I have no idea. That might have just been a person who knows, maybe they mistook me for somebody else. Maybe they've got something going on and they're not in their right mind and I'm leaving this situation.
All right, Carl, here it is, 2023. Dan was murdered in 2014. What are your thoughts about the way this case has been handled?
Well, that's one of the things that got me involved in it when my brother first told me about it last December there in Dallas area. And I was shocked to hear that this thing was slow rolling so bad that I became interested in it myself and started looking at it. And the more I looked at it, the more I saw how much the Adelsons were involved in it, to the extent that my brother wound up having me on YouTube talking about some of the evidence on Wendy, and that led me to be going on Surviving the Survivor to talk about up to 92 points we're at right now, with more to go, of indicators of Wendy Adelson's involvement alone, indicating that she was behind this as well. They did make a pretty good attempt to try to keep Wendy out of it because they knew that she would be the prime suspect for this. In fact, she was right away picked up by the police within a couple hours of Dan's hit, and they brought her back to the station and pounded her car. But within 40 minutes, she had the tables flipped and they thought she wasn't a suspect. But they interviewed her for another 5+ hours, and in there's a lot of good information that really shows also her reaction to her kids realizing that they're not going to have a father around was pretty telling as well, that this was something that she knew was going to happen. And if you look at her involvement and behaviors before, months, weeks, days before the murder, the day of the murder, as well as the days, weeks, and months after murder. All these things genuinely point to consciousness of guilt. And I think that's really why I'm just shocked that she hasn't been charged yet, as well as her mother, Donna. There's strong evidence against both them. There's also some evidence against Harvey, not as strong, but he was definitely involved. And I think you can make a strong case to show the details of their family inner dynamics was such that this was a total team effort. And even the video about the dad, I thought if the dad wasn't in on this from the get-go, the dad would have said something like, Harvey, Charlie, what the heck were you doing? This is like ridiculous. I told you shouldn't have done it. But there's also wiretap evidence where Charlie's also saying the parents were fully knowledgeable of what was going on in this case. So I do think they have a case against all of them. So why it's taking so long is really disturbing.
It's been a head scratcher to me as well. You allege a murder for hire plot, and it takes you 10 years to get the people who hired the murderers. Like that, it was so inconsistent from the beginning. Let's take a listen one more time to that testimony from Wendy Adelson about that joke that her brother made.
Did he mention hiring a hitman to kill your husband?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
No.
Did he ever joke about he looked into hiring a hitman, but buying you a TV as a divorce present would be cheaper?
He did make that joke. He tended to repeat himself, and sometimes he would make jokes that weren't very funny about all kinds of things.
All right, and was that TV, did he buy you a TV as a divorce present?
He did.
There it is. You're looking at her. Anya and Kevin, her roles, I mean, she testified in both trials against Catherine McBanoa, got some limited immunity for all of that. But my understanding is prosecutors have not given up the possibility of charging her if they have enough evidence, or the grandparents.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I mean, like, who stood to gain from this hit? You know, she's the mother of these children. She's in this bitter custody dispute. You know, she's trying to get out of Tallahassee and move back down to her family. So she's the one with a lot of things to directly gain from this, as does the rest of the Adelson family. And it's just really bizarre and sort of sickening to like think of a family that's potentially so enmeshed with one another that they would think that this was a good way of dealing with a conflict with, you know, an ex-husband, to do a murder plot instead of, you know, figuring things out and being supportive of one another over time. Just it's really just stupefying, frankly.
Yeah, and both families were Jewish. The children, as you know, being raised Jewish. There was a threat, or they were going to send the kids to Christian school just to spite Dan Markel because he's more Orthodox than they are. I mean, it was bizarre, bitter kind of stuff, but we'll continue to follow it. I want to thank everyone tonight. Carl Steinbeck, Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee, Murder Sheet Podcast, Dr. Judy Ho. Great insight. Thank you all so much.